Will Normie Osborn be able to rescue his grandfather Norman from the clutches of a ghost from his past? Well, let's hop into the pages of Red Goblin issue number 2 and find out together, shall we? So then, picking up directly from where the last issue had left off, Norman Osborn managed to get kidnapped from a big important fundraiser. The culprits turned out to be none other than members of the Goblin Nation, a group that Norman himself had put together back in the day, made up of the cast-off henchmen of other villains. Their mysterious leader and new Goblin King turned out to be none other than Phil Urich, former Hobgoblin, former heroic Green Goblin, former Goblin Knight, and current zombie. Phil is understandably all sorts of pissed at Norman, considering that he was the one who murdered him back when he first took control of the Carnage symbiote and became the Red Goblin originally. That fact actually goes a long way to explain why Phil is so absolutely terrified about this new Red Goblin running around New York City, and I bet he'd feel really silly if he knew that it was just a child playing dress-up, essentially. Now, what exactly does the Goblin King want from the former Green Goblin? Well, his blood, of course. Norman may be making real strides at trying to change himself, but deep down on a genetic cellular level, he's still Goblin through and through, and because of that, Goblin King wants to steal his blood to help repair the damage done to his own body, but also to give to the members of the Goblin Nation. Yes, because as Phil puts it, he's not nearly as selfish and self-centered as Norman is. He shares with those who follow him. Now, where is Normie and his family right now? Well, as we discover, Liz Allen is forcing her 2 sons to go to school, even though their grandfather was kidnapped and they were horribly terrorized at the end of the previous issue. But as Liz so eloquently puts it, we are a very affluent New York family, and people will talk if we don't keep up a strong front. Normie continues to be a little shit, but I must admit he's slowly but surely starting to win me over when he says stuff like, "Yeah, Mom, wouldn't want to hurt the brand, would I?" Again, I'm not sure if he's supposed to sound like a real child, or sound like an adult, or sound like a child who was forced to grow up before his time, but there's definitely something here with how the book handles Normie. Now, what is Normie's school life like? Well, not great, actually. He gets the crap knocked out of him by a couple future captains of industry who are mad at him because of his Osborn family connections bringing the police to the school. Again, I don't know what these preppy 8-year-olds have to fear with the police, but it actually does go a long way to build more sympathy for Normie Osborn, knowing that even though he is part of this famous, affluent family, it still doesn't mean he doesn't get bullied at school. Hell, the whole thing takes on another really interesting dimension too, and you remember that he is the Red Goblin and he does have a symbiote and he could stop either of these kids at any moment, but he chooses not to. But not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because he's kind of beating himself up for not being there to save his grandfather at the fundraiser when he had the chance, meaning that in the back of his head he feels like he deserves this beating. Wow, this is getting dark, isn't it? Normie ultimately gets saved by a brand new character named Anders. Apparently this kid is poor, came from a bunch of group homes, and is only at this fancy prep school because of a Stark Industries scholarship, which as far as I'm concerned, this character might as well have a big neon sign over his head that reads, "I will be important later, just not now." Anders also drops some knowledge on Normie that he's gained after years of living in the system, saying that fancy prep school is really like prison. Sooner or later, people are going to come for you and you're going to have to fight. You're not going to have to win, but you are going to have to not back down. Otherwise, these sharks are going to think you're a punk forever, man. They're going to smell the blood in the water. Now give me a cigarette. Believe it or not, this absolutely unhinged conversation with Anders is everything Normie needed to activate his own detective senses. The cops are probably never going to find Norman with those hundreds of thousands of miles of sewer under New York. But if he uses his symbiote Rascal as some sort of bloodhound, then maybe they can zero in on Norman's codex from his time wearing a symbiote and find him right quick. It's a smart idea that ends up paying off big right away. Also too, hey, can we talk about Normie's Red Goblin costume? The covers keep showing the scary, monstrous version of the Red Goblin, yet when Normie is in control, it looks more like a Power Ranger, which honestly makes all the sense in the world to me when you realize that he's a young kid and that he used to build Gundams with his dad. Normie bursts on into Goblin King's hideout and makes short work of a bunch of his henchmen, and here's where the story gets even more interesting. You see, Norman has lost so much blood when he sees a guy in red coming to save him. He just kind of jumps to the conclusion that it must be SpiderMan, and here's the thing, Norman actively doesn't want to be saved, saying that he's made too much suffering as it is and he should just be left to die. Again, pretty freaking dark when you remember that he's talking to his grandson right here, right now, but also it jives really nicely with everything that's going on over in the Gold Goblin book, with Norman striving to do better, yet somehow still managing to do bad every time he tries to do a little good. Normie's read on Phil Urich is kind of funny too. He basically says, Jesus Christ, Grandpa, how many tribute acts and pretenders do you have? The answer is, of course, a lot, and you just became the newest one. Normie packs up his grandpa and is ready to escape, only to be met off at the pass by more Goblin Nation guys, these ones stronger than the others who have actively managed to level up on Goblin blood. It's here too, with his back against the wall, Normie considers actually letting Rascal take control and go all feral kill crazy on these guys if it means that they can escape. And so that was Red Goblin issue number 2, everybody, and once again, I gotta admit, I'm kind of interested in where this story is going. It's already thrown some very fascinating curveballs my way, and I'm kind of invested in a way I'm not invested in a lot of new Spider-Man stories recently. That's not to say it's totally perfect. They're still ironing out a lot of the wrinkles when it comes to Norman Osborn as a character, because let's face it, last week he was kind of a non-character. And now, basically on the fly, Alex Packendale has to discover, what kind of person is Normie? Is he a jerk on purpose because that's how he was raised? Is he reticent to be a jerk? What are his hopes? What are his dreams? How does he actually feel about the Osborn family legacy? He clearly seems to love Norman, despite all the terrible things he's done and how all of his sins from the past continue to come back and bite him and the family in the ass over and over again. There's just a lot there to actually chew on and dissect, and I hope this book actually continues long enough for us to get answers to these questions, because if so, I think we'll actually have something special on our hands here. It's also just a really novel concept too, to have this kind of, symbiote, Carnage-esque anti-hero who's also just like a little boy. Usually in comics like this, we get stories about, teenagers or 20-somethings. There's something really unique and untapped when it comes to giving us a superhero story through the eyes of an actual child. There's also something to be said too about the fact that the book is still really uncertain about whether or not Normie is going to be a hero or a villain by the time all of this is done, and that's a really interesting ticking clock to build your new book around. Overall, I would give this one a 7.5 out of 10. I am kind of rooting for this one.
Hey there everyone, Kate Joel again, and I just want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. It means a lot to me. And hey, if you enjoyed the book I covered in this issue and want some comics of your own, might I recommend Book Depository? It's my #1 place for shopping for comic book trades. You get a great price, and if you use my link down in the description, you'll actually be helping me out at the same time. You get something, I get something, everybody wins, right? So until next time everyone, I've been Joel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.